Hey folks, it's your friend Bernie here. So before we get into today's episode of the Co-working Values podcast, I want to bring to your attention the Community Builders Cohort, which is a 12-week online program, which is peer-to-peer support and coaching from Emily and I to help you take your community from undiscovered to unstoppable. And all the details to get involved in this are in the show notes. And the best way we've ever found people to build community is by showing them how to build community and then letting people like you loose on building the community. You'll love it. Get to the link in the show notes. Now let's get to the episode.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Co-working Values podcast. I'm Emily Breeder, and today on the call we have Bernie Mitchell, who you know, and Adrian Segar, meeting designer and facilitator and author of Conferences That Work. Adrian, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into meeting design and facilitation?
Sure. I am. Thanks for having me on the show, by the way. I have a complicated history. This is my fifth career. I started off as a nerdy academic. I have a PhD in particle physics. I used to do neutrino physics at CERN a very long time ago. But all the careers I had, I've always, for some reason that I didn't really understand until I was about 50 years old, I always wanted to do conferences about the topics I was professionally involved with. So I did physics conferences. I fell in love with Vermont and moved to the United States in 77 and started a solar energy business, started some of the earliest solar energy conferences in the United States, and continued running conferences like this, traditional events. We're going to run a conference on this. That's who are the experts. Until 1992, when I was in a new field that there were no experts. I wanted to do a conference, and there were a few hundred people in the United States who were doing the same thing. And we got together. We didn't know each other, and so I had to invent something different. And so I invented a format on the spot, sort of, where it's like, well, we don't know each other, so let's find out who's here. Let's find out what they want to talk about, what's top of mind, what the problems they're grappling with right now, what they want to talk about, and so on. And also, let's find out what expertise and experience is in the room. Maybe there's some people who could solve our problems in this room with us. And so we did that. We took all that information and turned it into an ad hoc conference program. Well, it's obvious that a third of the people here want to talk about this because they're having a lot of trouble with it. And wow, there are two people here who seem to know something about it. So let's have them lead a session. So we ran that conference, and then we had a close at the end, which is like, well, what was this like, folks? Want to do it again? How could we make it better next time? And that conference has now been running for 32 years. It's a 3 or 4 day conference. I'm not involved with it anymore, and it acted as a test bed for a lot of the work that I did. People started hearing about this way of doing conferences and asked me to do conferences using this format in topics for the first time I knew nothing about. I discovered that it always seemed to work really well. And after about 10 years, I decided I'm going to write a book about this. I think, Emily, you told me you have that book, Conferences That Work, Creating Events That People Love. And that book came out in 2009, and I was suddenly in the meetings industry. And the rest is history. I've written a couple more books on meeting design since then and run the world's most popular website on meeting design, Conferences That Work.
So, Adrian, in 2024, why do people still come to events? Because we've had COVID, we've got the internet. So why should I turn up at an event? And how should event organizers approach what they do these days?
Well, there are still plenty of traditional events going on in 2024. People go to events for all kinds of reasons. There's the word events, there's the word meetings, there's the word conferences. I mean, events can be special events, which include weddings and music concerts and so on. And the reasons that people go to those aren't really different from the reasons they've been going to them for a very long time. But when we're talking about conferences, groups, events where people come together who have something in common, not listening to music necessarily or dancing, but actually learning and meeting colleagues and connecting with other people, that has changed a lot in the last uh, 10, 15, 20 years. Even though there are many traditional events where people still come and there's a predetermined conference program and the people speak for 15 minutes on the stage and then there's 10 minutes for questions, there are plenty of those still around. But people have realized for many different reasons that the whole one of which is the rise of the internet, of course, where you don't have to go anywhere to hear an expert lecture about something. You can just watch them on YouTube. People have realized that conferences, uh, what people want from meetings these days is not just information, content, as people call it, but they want connection. And so there is a rise in events, even traditional events are starting to be influenced in that direction. And that's what I've been working on for the past 30 plus years to in the meeting industry, traditional meeting industry, to raise the awareness of the importance of creating events that foster and support connection, and not just connection because people need it as a fundamental need, and finding someone at a meeting who you are going to collaborate with for the rest of your life or influences you is an incredibly important thing to happen. And the kinds of conferences I do make it much easier for that to happen. But also because these days learning is about connection. We don't learn from people lecturing at us anymore. We learn from our networks. If I want to know something these days, that I don't know or get advice on things, I have a whole network of hundreds or maybe thousands of people that I can tap, and that pre-internet, that was really pretty much impossible, except at an in-person event. Now, and so if you're going to have an in-person event, it's the best possible time for people to create, to discover their tribe, if as Seth Godin would put it. It's an incredible opportunity if the format of the event is designed to make that as easy and likely as possible, which I try to make mine that way. It's an incredible opportunity for people to connect and learn far more successfully as a result. So the answer to your question is that an increasing number of people are coming to meetings wanting to learn through connection, to increase the size of their networks, not in terms of swapping business cards, but in terms of meeting the three people at that meeting with 150 people at it, who they are so glad that they met, who are going to maybe change their lives in some way or another as a result. And people are realizing increasingly the importance of meetings and conferences that are designed to facilitate that.
Now, in the co-working world, it's a well-known fact that in co-working, if you don't have a community, you're just renting offices
Mm-hmm.
with a couple of little amenities. So that facet of it, the community and collaboration, which are two of the co-working values, is what really drew us to ask you to talk with us today. Co-working space managers and owners, they have to run events all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time they'll choose a topic, or of course sometimes you'll have somebody come in, do a workshop or something like that. Is there a way to enhance that sort of community and collaboration concept in events like that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you ask me to do, or if someone asked me to do an event for a co-working space, I don't know give me a typical size of what, or how many people might come to an event like that. Say,
Oh, really?
mhm.
Like 150?
Yeah, that's a good size. In fact, and again, it depends on how long you make that event for. But in a day, let's take that as an example. Let's take 150 people in a day. Let's take 100, because 150 a group size of 150 would be wonderful to have an evening before and a full day. That would be optimum from my experience. But what I would do is I would run. It's a golden opportunity for everybody to learn a lot about the other people who inhabit that space, and maybe discover the one or two or three other people who they've seen in a cubicle down the corridor or something, but never actually talked to discover who those people are, discover that they have things of value that they can work on together, and I have a very important opening tool that I use at the start of events like this called the 3 questions, where um, we'd split 150 people into probably 3 groups of 50, and spend about an hour and a half. And the 50 people in 3 separate rooms would be given a card with these 3 questions on it, given some time to think about the questions, and then they would answer the questions. Each person gets the same amount of time, a minute and a half, a couple of minutes, to answer the 3 questions to the entire group. And the 3 questions are, how did I get here? What is it I do? Um, how is it I'm working in this co-space? Anything they want to share. And the second question, which is probably the most important question, is what would I like to have happen? So here I am today with 150 folks at this co-working space. I have this issue that I'm working on. I have this professional need, for example, that I don't know how to fill. Is there anyone here who can help me or can give me resources? Are there people who would love to work with me on this project that I'm thinking about? You can ask for anything you want for the second question. And the third question is, what expertise or experience do I have that others here might find useful? And that uncovers the talent, the resources in the room. And at the end of the 3 questions, you have a huge amount of information from those 50 people. And I have a whole set of techniques for combining that if you have multiple groups, as you would have in this case. And the next step is you create a conference program that is optimized to the needs of those 150 people who are there. So it may turn out that there's a topic that a lot of people are grappling with, some support in a particular area that isn't available in that region, for example, but maybe there's one person there who knows a lot about it, who could lead a session on that. You get the general idea. And then the final part of that probably one-day conference would be a very important closing session where we, in a one-day conference, you might not have time to do this, but a longer event, I would run something called a personal retrospective, which is a whole format that allows you to think about what you want to change as a result of being at the event, things you've learned, the connections you've made, what are you actually going to do practically to implement that change in your life. And the final session, which I would always hold, is called a spective, which is a combination of a retrospective. What just happened here? What was this event like for us? What was the great stuff about it? And then a prospective. If we did this again, how could we make it even better? What would you do differently? What would you add to it? What would you not do? And that's a very efficient sort of feedback process. Everybody, all 150 people are involved in that. And it does 2 things. It gives a lot of feedback to the organizers of the event, and it also creates a very strong community feeling for a sense of community for those 150 people, because you are discovering not only your own experience, which you already know, but you're learning little pieces about everybody else's experience as well. And that creates this communal experience of the event, which is one of the main ways which we build community, in this world. So that's essentially what I would do for a co-working space. And I mean, I'm just answering your question, off the top of my head. In practice, if I work with clients, I always, talk about their goals and objectives before we go into the details. I'm just giving you a sort of overall big picture.
That's beautiful. What would you call an event like that nowadays? Because like in the past, we've run bar camps, unconferences, throwdowns, and if you say, you know, cheese and wine party, it says what it does on the tin. But what like saying come to this community connection event sounds a bit vague. And when you're trying to, you know, for people that won't read the event description,
Yeah.
how do you say what that session will be about?
Well, I have to say, for people who don't read anything, it doesn't matter what you write because they're not going to read it. Let me say a couple of things. First of all, a lot of people call these things unconferences. I don't like that word very much for two reasons. First of all, because I think, in fact, historically, what I've just described to you is what conferences used to be. Uh, when you think about the first time a group gets together in a new field, what I just described to you is what has to happen because nobody knows anything. There are no acknowledged experts. There's no hierarchy. And so what I described to you that happened to me in 1992 is what happens at the start of any uh, event of this kind. And so I would argue and have written about this. I write a lot on my blog. There are over 800 blog posts about meeting design and facilitation on it these days. So I like to think of unconferences, as they're popularly called, as the true conferences, but that isn't going to work. The words I usually use these days, which no one really adapts too much, are peer conferences. I think that's what they really are. The other reason I don't like the word unconference is that it's become a sort of hip phrase to say as a shorthand for saying this conference is going to be really cool. Uh, for me, an unconference is a conference where the program is determined at the event in real time. So people say, "Oh, I'm having an unconference, and that we're going to have a call for papers for this unconference." And as far as I'm concerned, they're just using the word unconference as a a desirable adjective rather than as something that actually is an unconference. So, but there is no good word. Unfortunately there is no good word that there's no general understanding. I will use unconference or peer conference depending on who my audience is. In terms of marketing, I will just add that there is language that I provide all the time to people who are interested in doing events of the kind that I design and facilitate, that appeals to the right people. You basically talk about the event being unlike a traditional event. And you say in this material, which, is one side of an 8.5, 11, less than 8.5, 11 sheet of paper, you say this is an event where you will have an opportunity to decide what we're going to talk about. And you can get that across, in a few paragraphs. So it is possible to market these events. And someone who wants to go and sit and, listen to people lecture at them, and because they're tired and exhausted, or they just want to go somewhere nice and eat some good food and bring the family, they're not going to be that interested anyway. But you can certainly write marketing copy for these events that will attract exactly the kind of people who will turn out to be thrilled to be there and love it. And the most I wrote my first book because the evaluations that I got over the first 10 years I was doing this in my spare time were the most common evaluation was, I don't want to go to a traditional conference anymore. This was so much better, or words to that effect. And that is what a lot of people's experience, not everyone's, but most people's experience who go to these events is. It spoils them it turns them off traditional events.
So, Adrian, when people come to conferences, and this happens to me, I'll come to, any type of event that's kind of businessy, educationally, and I'll get all fired up. And then I get back and I'll leave the notebook on the desk and forget about it. And I've kind of got the energy inside of me, which is good, but they're kind of, oh yeah, I'm going to build 2 websites and open a chicken farm, and I never get around to it. How can people how do you suggest event organizers encourage people to keep taking action after they've had this like amazing away day?
Well, maintaining community is an art. Um, there's this great book Joe Bacon wrote about the art of community, which is well worth reading. It's a little old now, but has a lot of good advice in it. Um, First of all, I think what I talked about a little earlier, that actually making sure that you've built community in a formal way during the event or during the close of the event is very important, because that significantly increases the impetus of and the likelihood that people will feel that they are part of something that they want to continue. How you create or maintain community or build community in between events is a tough one. I'll say that and then I don't think there's any one single answer. Having some online um, service that like the old-fashioned listservs and so on, are still a lot of people still use those. They're very effective, so that people know that if they have a question or need some help or resources and so on, they can just fire off an email, and membership of the group will get it right away. But in your space, in the co-working space, there's obviously no reason why you can't have, since everybody is local, have regional meetings pretty often to keep. And frankly, there's very little that I don't think there's really anything that beats an in-person meeting. And of course, the trick is in each community is to figure out what is the optimum balance. You don't want to have meetings every week, probably, but maybe once a month or whatever, and what scale those meetings should be to maintain the community at a level that is appropriate for your group. There's no one answer. A lot of national associations and groups will meet once a year, or maybe twice a year, or maybe have some spin-off specialized events, or maybe meet online. There are so many options these days. But I do think that if you want to maintain community, meetings are essential. And my rule of thumb is that if you don't meet people you feel are part of your community at least once a year, you will start to drift away from that community, unless, of course, it's a very active online community. There are communities that online weekly chats that I join probably more often than not, and so I'm connecting with those people every week, and it's online, and it's convenient, and it's an hour, and I love to do that. So no one answer, but we have the great thing is we have a lot of different options these days, and I think what's important is to look at those options and figure out what your membership of the group needs to work for them. And of course, you ask them that. You say, "How's this working? What if we did this? Okay, people want to have this, and we need some volunteers to make it happen. Who will do that? If do we have someone who will do that, and so on."
When you ask people what they want from something, do you call them up and ask them, or do you send them a survey?
Oh,
Or like how do you get that information?
well, the best way to get it is actually at the events themselves. That's why that closing session, the spective, is so important. If you recall, it's a session where I ask everyone at the meeting can come up. We have a couple of mics, a plus mic and a delta mic, and people start off with a plus mic. And I just ask people to form a line and come up and say briefly what was great about the event. It could be anything, and so on. We run through all of those. Eventually, we go to the deltas. The deltas are what if we do this again? How would we make this event better? What would we change? What would we do more of, less of? What would we get rid of? What would we add? And so on. If you do that, at the event, you have a tremendous amount of information, and obviously circumstances might change for a group. Something new might come up, some pressing desire or need that has to be addressed. But in general, asking people what they want on an individual basis, we all know this is very time-consuming work. large groups sometimes have the personnel to do this kind of work. I don't know how well it works. My preference is always to do that while everyone at a meeting of the group is together, and ask them there and then what they want, and then have a mechanism where they can update that, let's say a listserv or some online meetings periodically as the needs arise. So individual surveys are helpful. These days, they need to be incredibly short if you're going to get any kind of response rates, and you have to be aware that the sampling you get, the people who respond, are not necessarily representative of everybody. They're the ones who had the time or energy to respond.
Thanks so much for joining us, Adrian. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can learn probably far more about me than you ever wanted to at my website, which is conferencesthatwork.com. And there's everything about me that you might want to learn there. And don't miss out on the blog. Again, the blog is full of free articles about meeting design, facilitation, getting stuck in a elevator with a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, stories, all kinds of things that I've been interested in and write about once a week for the last, 15 years now. So conferencesthatwork.com. You can find me still on Twitter. I still post there, but I'm a big fan of Mastodon. Mastodon.social is my instance, and I love meeting people there. There are not a lot of people in the events industry there. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Adrian Segar, Adrian Segar, Segar. Find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect if you are so interested.
That's great. Thank you very much for all of that. I think I've got more notes, almost as many notes here as you have words on your blog. So thank you very much for all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put links in the show notes to everything we talked about in this podcast and where you can find Adrian's extensive blog. I always really admire people that document the process in a blog form. I think it's one of the best things you can ever do for yourself and your community. So you can find us if you go to your nearest and favorite search engine and type in Co-working Values Podcast, and it will come up there. We spend all our life on Substack nowadays, which is a really good, we publish twice a week, and that is a great place to sort of infuse a community. We found that there's it's kind of like a website with good old Twitter, because there's Substack notes there. So we're slowly building community over there. And also we have a gigantic, I think it's nearly 7,500 people in our co-working LinkedIn group, where we post things from all around the world, from Europe, North America, and the rest of the world, as they like to say. Be careful out there. It is a jungle. Thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you for inviting me, Bernie and Emily. Really enjoyed being here today.